The sound of hunger. It was a Thursday morning. The sun had barely stretched its arms across the sky, and most of the world was still waking up. But not everyone had the luxury of sleeping in. In a quiet corner of the city, a tiny bakery opened its doors. The bell above the entrance gave a soft chime as the first few customers stepped in, lured by the smell of fresh loaves and warm pastries. The walls of the bakery were covered with old photographs of families, children, smiles, and right beside the register hung a small sign in faded ink that read, "No credit allowed." Behind the counter stood Maria, the owner, a kind woman in her 60s with silver strands in her dark braid and calloused hands from years of kneading dough. Her eyes were always tired, but they softened at the sight of children, even the ones who couldn't pay. At 6:47 a.m., the door creaked again. Two little girls stepped in, identical in every way. They couldn't have been more than 8 years old. They wore faded coats a size too big, and their sneakers were torn at the toes. The older one, though by only a few minutes, held the younger's hand tightly. They didn't speak at first, just stared at the counter, then at the shelves. Behind Maria, where warm bread waited in neat rows, Maria noticed them and gave a gentle smile. "Good morning, sweethearts," she said, even though she already guessed what was coming. The older girl stepped forward, her voice trembling. "Miss, can we get one loaf? We don't have money today, but we will soon, we promise." Maria looked at them. She saw the shame in their eyes, the kind that no child should carry. But she also saw something else: desperation. Behind those innocent faces was a hunger that had grown too loud to ignore. She hesitated. The rules were the rules. The sign was clear, but this wasn't about business. It was about human dignity. Just as she opened her mouth to speak, the door opened again. The little bell chimed once more. A tall man walked in, wearing a black beanie and simple clothes. He had a backpack slung over one shoulder, and he looked like any regular person walking by. But his eyes held depth, kindness, sorrow, and recognition. It was Keanu Reeves. He didn't walk in with the confidence of a celebrity. He moved like someone who had seen pain and knew how it felt to be invisible. He paused near the entrance when he saw the girls. He didn't speak, just watched. Maria noticed him, startled. "Oh my, you're Keanu Reeves," she said, her voice just above a whisper. He gave a small nod and smiled softly. "I'm just here for some bread." He stepped closer and looked down at the twin girls. The older one quickly lowered her eyes, feeling embarrassed. The younger one held onto her sister tighter. Keanu knelt down slowly, so he was eye level with them. "What's your name?" he asked gently. "I'm Layla," the older one replied. "And this is Maya." Keanu looked at them for a moment. His face didn't change, but something inside him did. He reached into his backpack and pulled out a notebook, flipping through some worn pages until he found a small envelope. "Maria," he said, placing the envelope on the counter. "This is for them, and for every child who walks in here and asks for bread." Maria opened it slowly. Her hands trembled as she saw the thick stack of bills. "Sir, this is too much. I can't." "Yes, you can," he said calmly. "Just make sure no child walks out of here hungry." Layla stared up at him. "Why are you doing this?" Keanu stood and looked out the window, his eyes distant. "Because once, someone did it for me, and I never forgot how it felt." His words floated in the air like a song that clings to memory. Maria wiped a tear from her cheek as she handed the girls a warm loaf of bread. The smell alone seemed to light up their faces, but before they could leave, something even more unexpected happened. Keanu turned to them again and said, "Do you girls like stories?" The girls nodded. Double quotes, "Come by tomorrow morning," he smiled. "I'll bring you one." And just like that, he walked out. But outside the bakery, behind the smile he wore, Keanu felt the heaviness in his chest. It wasn't just about the girls. It was about his past. A past filled with shadows, cold nights, and days when he too had no money, no food, and no one to ask for help. He had once been invisible, and now he wanted to see everyone who still felt that way. Word spread fast. Someone had taken a photo of Keanu leaving the bakery and posted it online with the caption, "He paid for every hungry child's bread." But what they didn't know was that this wasn't about charity. It was about something deeper. Something only Keanu truly understood. The next morning, the twins returned, but they weren't alone. 3 more kids had joined them, all from the same neighborhood. Kids who usually hid their hunger behind silence. Keanu was waiting outside, leaning against the wall with a paper bag in his hand and a folded piece of paper in the other. "Story time," he said with a smile. They sat on the curb together. Strangers stared, some took photos, but he didn't care. This wasn't for the internet. This was for them. He read the story of a boy who had nothing but kept giving anyway. A boy who once shared his only piece of bread with a stray dog because he couldn't bear to eat alone. The story wasn't from a book. It was his own. As he read, his voice caught. And when he looked up, he saw the tears in Layla's eyes. Maya leaned her head against her sister's shoulder. "That boy," Maya whispered, "was you, wasn't it?" Keanu nodded slowly. And just when the morning felt whole and warm, a woman stormed out of a nearby cafe across the street. Her suit was clean, expensive. Her heels clicked loud against the sidewalk. "You shouldn't be sitting here like this," she snapped at Keanu. "You're a public figure. People are watching." Keanu stood up slowly. "They can watch. You're making people uncomfortable," she said. "It's not a good look." He looked at her, calm and steady, then turned to the children. "Do I make you uncomfortable?" They all shook their heads quickly. "Then that's all that matters." The woman huffed and walked away, but the moment had changed. Something deeper had just been revealed. It wasn't just about bread or stories. It was about how easily society looks away from pain, and how rare it is for someone to look closer. Keanu kept coming every morning. And every morning, more kids came. The bakery added a new sign beneath the old one. It read, "Bread is free for children, thanks to a man who remembers." But one morning, the twins didn't show up. And that's when everything took a darker turn. The empty bench, sun peeked through the clouds as morning light spilled across the sidewalk. The bakery opened as usual. The bell above the door chimed softly. Maria prepared the shelves with warm loaves and placed the sign in the window, "Bread is free for children, thanks to a man who remembers." Outside, KeanuReeves stood near the same wall, holding a paper bag of fresh bread and 2 small notebooks. He looked down the street, watching each figure that passed, waiting. But today, Layla and Maya didn't come. He waited 20 minutes. Then 30. His smile faded into a line of worry. The twins were never late. They always came early, always held hands, always smiled when they saw him. But now the bench outside the bakery sat empty. Maria stepped out with a warm croissant and offered it to Keanu. "You waiting for the girls?" He nodded. "They didn't come," Maria sighed. "I noticed. That's not like them. Maybe something happened." Keanu's brow furrowed. He looked across the street where he had once sat with the twins, reading stories. The wind rustled the plastic bag in his hand, but the bench stayed still. Too still. "Do you know where they live?" he asked. Maria hesitated. "Somewhere around 5th and Grove. They usually walk from that direction." Keanu didn't wait. He handed Maria the bag and took off toward 5th Street. As he walked through the narrow alleys and cracked sidewalks, memories began to rise. This neighborhood wasn't far from where he had lived as a teenager, back when he had nothing. It all felt familiar: the broken windows, the rusted gates, the smell of dust and cooking oil. But now it held a different meaning. He reached 5th and Grove. A cluster of run-down buildings stood close together like they were leaning on each other to keep from falling. He asked around kids playing on the sidewalk, an old man on a folding chair, a woman carrying laundry. No one knew exactly where the twins lived, until he saw a small boy with mismatched shoes staring at him from behind a fence. "Have you seen Layla and Maya?" Keanu asked gently. The boy blinked. "They live on the 3rd floor. That red door." Keanu looked up. The building was gray and crumbling. The stairs outside were rusted and tilted. He climbed carefully, each step groaning under his weight. He knocked on the red door. No answer. He knocked again, louder this time. Finally, the door creaked open. A woman stood there. Her eyes were red and swollen. She looked exhausted, as if she hadn't slept in days. Behind her, the apartment was dark and nearly empty. "Can I help you?" she asked, her voice guarded. "My name is Keanu," he said quietly. "I've been meeting your daughters at the bakery. They didn't show up today. I just wanted to check on them." The woman stared at him in silence. For a moment, it seemed she didn't know what to say. Then her shoulders dropped. "They're sick," she whispered. "Both of them. Fever, cough. I couldn't afford medicine. And the clinic said they were full." Keanu felt something tighten in his chest. "Can I see them?" The woman hesitated, then nodded. Inside, the apartment was sparse. A single mattress. On the floor, a small stove. A cracked window covered with a towel. On the mattress, the twins lay curled up beneath a thin blanket. Their cheeks were pale, and they coughed softly in their sleep. Keanu knelt beside them, gently brushing a strand of hair from Maya's forehead. Her skin was too warm. "They need help," he said. The mother nodded slowly. "I've been trying, but I lost my job last month. Everything's falling apart." Keanu stood and pulled out his phone. "I'm taking them to a doctor today." The mother's eyes widened. "But I can't pay you back. I'm not asking for anything," he said simply. "Just let me help." 2 hours later, the twins were lying in clean white beds at a private clinic downtown. Doctors moved quickly, administering fluids, checking vitals, doing what needed to be done. Keanu stood outside their room, watching through the glass. Mother sat beside him, holding a warm cup of coffee. "Why are you doing this?" she asked. He didn't answer right away. Then he said, "Because once, I had someone who saved me. And I couldn't even say thank you." She looked at him, confused. "When I was 19, Keanu continued, "I had nowhere to go. I slept behind a diner. One night, the owner found me and gave me a bowl of soup. No questions. Just kindness. He never asked who I was or why I was there. He just helped." He turned to her. "You don't forget people like that, and you never waste the chance to become one." That night, Keanu sat beside the girls' hospital beds, reading from the notebook he brought earlier. He told them a story about 2 brave sisters who lived in a forest and faced a terrible sickness. But they survived because they had each other. Maya smiled weakly. Layla reached out her tiny hand and held his. "You're like the forest guardian." "She whispered. He smiled. "Maybe, but you two are the real heroes." Over the next few days, things began to shift. News outlets picked up the story. Someone at the clinic had recognized him and posted a video of him reading to the girls. Headlines read, "Keanu Reeves saves sick twins after bakery moment goes viral." But Keanu didn't care about the fame. He refused interviews. Refused cameras. This wasn't a show. It was personal. When the twins were finally released from the hospital, Keanu didn't drop them off and disappear. He visited their home again, this time with bags of groceries, clothes, medicine, and something else, a small key. "What's this?" their mother asked. "An apartment," he said, "just across town. It's already paid for a year." "Keanu," she whispered, overwhelmed. We can't accept this." He gently placed the key in her palm. "Yes, you can. But just as things began to feel hopeful, something unexpected happened. The woman from the cafe, the same one who once told Keanu to stop sitting with the children, filed a complaint with the city. She claimed the daily gathering outside the bakery was causing disruption to nearby businesses. She argued that a crowd of unsupervised children was bad for the area's image. A city official showed up at the bakery the next morning with a clipboard in hand. Maria was stunned. "You're shutting us down?" "Not yet," the man said. "But we've received several complaints. You can't continue giving out free food without proper permits." Keanu stood in the doorway listening. "This isn't a business transaction," Maria argued. "This is about children." "I understand," the man said. "But rules are rules." Keanu stepped forward. "Then we'll follow them. Tell us what needs to be done." The man handed him a list of forms, permits, inspections, and zoning applications. "It's not impossible," he said, "but it's not easy either." Keanu took the papers. "Then we'll make it happen." But the city official wasn't the only obstacle. The woman behind the complaint wasn't finished yet. She had connections, powerful ones. And soon, things would escalate beyond a simple permit issue. What Keanu didn't know was that the next step in this journey would test not just his kindness, but his strength, because the woman had one goal: shut him down. Asterisk the letter that changed. Everything. The sun rose over the city like a quiet promise. But for Keanu Reeves, it wasn't a peaceful morning. He sat alone at a corner table inside the bakery, the same place where he had first seen Layla and Maya. The bread shelves were full, the coffee smelled rich, but the mood was heavy. Maria stood near the counter, her eyes red from a night of worry. In her hands, she held an official letter. It had come early that morning, sealed cold, and full of legal terms. The city had denied their emergency permit request. No free bread distribution, no food to minors without a registered nonprofit status, and no gatherings outside the shop without a community event clearance. Maria placed the letter on the table, her hands trembling. "I'm sorry, Keanu. They say we have 10 days before we get fined. After that, they shut me down completely." Keanu picked up the letter and read it again. The words were clear. And behind those words, he could hear her voice, that woman from the cafe. Powerful, connected, and determined to silence him. He leaned back in the chair. He didn't speak for a long time. Finally, he said, "If they want a war, they'll get one. But not with anger, with heart." Maria tilted her head. "What are you thinking?" Keanu stood. "I'm thinking it's time the world sees what this place really is. Not a business, not a charity, but a miracle." That afternoon, Keanu walked through the neighborhood again, not as a celebrity, not as someone giving things away, but as a builder. He spoke to families, teachers, church workers, grocery clerks, librarians. He asked for support, signatures, volunteers, anything they could offer. "You want to make the bakery a nonprofit?" One man asked. "No," Keanu replied. "I want to make it a movement." Meanwhile, Maria printed 100 copies of a flyer. Across the top it read, "You tried to stop the bread, but you can't stop the kindness." The flyers spread fast. By evening, they were posted on doors, pinned to community boards, and taped to street poles all over the neighborhood. But the woman behind the complaint saw them too. Her name was Helen Crawford. She wasn't just some upset cafe owner. She was the chair of the local merchant board. She had friends in the mayor's office and donors in her contact list. Her cafe served overpriced lattes and imported cookies. And she did not like attention, going to a rundown bakery owned by an old woman and championed by an actor she saw as a faded brand. "He's trying to play saint," she hissed during a call with the city official. "But this isn't a movie. Shut it down." But Keanu wasn't backing away. In just 2 days, Something magical started to happen. Volunteers showed up to repaint the bakery walls. A local artist painted a mural of two girls holding hands under a tree, bread in one hand, books in the other. People from all over the city came with donations. Even a retired judge offered pro bono legal help. Then came the interview requests. Every major outlet wanted to speak with Keanu, but he declined all of them, except one. A small local podcast run by a high school journalism club. The host, a soft-spoken teenager named Elliot, asked him, "Why this bakery?" Keanu answered, "Because this bakery doesn't just make bread. It gives people hope. And sometimes that's the one thing you need to survive." By the end of that week, the story had gone viral again, but this time not because Keanu paid for bread, but because a whole community rose up beside him. But Helen wasn't done. On a rainy Monday morning, she made her next move. A truck pulled up outside the bakery. Two men stepped out wearing city uniforms. They handed Maria a new letter, this time marked urgent enforcement. The bakery had been flagged for safety violations. The wiring was too old. The outdoor awning wasn't up to code, and the seating bench blocked pedestrian flow. They had 72 hours to fix everything or face permanent closure. Maria's knees nearly gave out as she read it. "We can't fix all this in 3 days," she whispered. Keanu took the paper and stared at it. "Yes, we can," he said softly. He made one call. Then another. By noon, 10 volunteers arrived. By evening, 20 more. Electricians rewired the back room. Builders replaced the awning. A group of students moved the bench and cleaned the sidewalk until it sparkled. They worked into the night, some people bringing food, others bringing tools, and everyone bringing heart. And still, Helen Crawford wasn't finished. On the third day, just as the final inspection was about to take place, someone broke into the bakery in the early morning hours. Flour bags were slashed. The cash register was stolen. The mural was spray-painted with the words, "You can't save everyone." Maria called Keanu at 5 a.m., tears in her voice. He arrived within 10 minutes. He looked at the destruction and said nothing for a long time. Then he picked up a broom and began to sweep. One by one, people joined him. By the time the inspector arrived, the shop looked brand new. And waiting on the windowsill was a tray of warm croissants and a simple note that read, "Even if you try to erase kindness, we'll just bake more of it." The inspector walked through the building, checking every box, every wire, every small detail. Then, at the end, he turned to Maria and Keanu and said, "You passed." A cheer erupted in the street outside, but Keanu didn't smile yet. He turned to Maria. "We still have to make this permanent. We still have to protect this place." So, the next day, Keanu filed the papers to create the Layla and Maya Foundation. Its mission was simple: feed children, inspire kindness, and build safe spaces in forgotten corners of the city. But something unexpected happened at the City Hall office. As Keanu walked out, holding the approved documents in his hands, a man in a black suit stepped in front of him. Double quotes, "Mr. Reeves," he said, holding out a card. Keanu took it. It was embossed with gold, "The Crawford Family. Legal Division." "Helen is escalating this," the man said. "She's filing a motion to block your foundation, claiming it's a cover for celebrity branding and public disruption." Keanu raised an eyebrow. "What does that even mean?" "It means she's taking you to court." Keanu didn't flinch. "Let her." The man stepped closer. "Just know, she plays dirty. She's not afraid to drag names through mud. If you fight her, it won't be quiet." Keanu looked past him toward the horizon, then down at the bakery key in his hand. "Good," he said calmly. "Let the whole world hear the story." He walked away with steady steps, because now, this wasn't just about bread. It was about justice, and he would not let the world silence two little girls who once asked for bread on credit. Courtroom of truth. It was early morning when the letter came, thick envelope. Legal header, sharp words. Inside was the official notice. The Crawford legal team had filed a lawsuit against the bakery and the newly formed Layla and Maya Foundation. The charges included violation of city codes, operating an unlicensed food program, and most painful of all, using vulnerable children for public attention. Maria dropped the letter as she finished reading. "They're saying we used the girls," she whispered, stunned. Keanu picked it up from the floor slowly. He read every line, then placed it carefully back on the table. "They don't see what this really is," he said quietly. "But they will." The news spread fast. Soon, headlines flashed across social media. Keanu Reeves sued for helping children. People were shocked, some outraged, others confused, but Helen Crawford was confident. She stood behind her expensive desk, giving interviews in front of polished cameras, saying things like, "This city needs rules, structure, not chaotic charity that disrupts local commerce." But what she didn't realize was this: when you try to shut down kindness, it multiplies. And now, the people weren't just watching, they were choosing sides. On the day of the court hearing, the line outside the courthouse wrapped around the building. Mothers holding their kids, students, workers in uniform, even strangers who had never been to the bakery but were touched by the story. Inside the courtroom, the air felt tight. Keanu sat beside Maria and the twins' mother, all silent but strong. His lawyer, an older man with kind eyes and a calm voice, leaned toward him. "They'll attack your intentions," he warned. "They'll try to twist everything." Keanu nodded. "Let them. The truth doesn't need makeup." The judge entered, stern face, thick glasses, slow walk. As the room stood and sat again, Helen's lawyers stood tall and began their case. They presented videos, newspaper clippings, photos of Keanu reading stories outside the bakery. "Your Honor," one lawyer said sharply, "this is not a private act of kindness. This is a media stunt. Reeves has used this event to boost his public image and sway public sentiment." Keanu watched without emotion. Helen leaned forward, nodding slightly, whispering into her assistant's ear. But then, the judge turned toward Keanu's side. "Mr. Reeves," he said, adjusting his glasses, "do you have anything to say before we continue?" Keanu stood slowly. He didn't hold any notes. He didn't clear his throat or perform. He just looked at the judge, then at the people in the room. And then he spoke. "I didn't come to this city to make headlines. I came to buy bread." A ripple of laughter moved softly through the room. "But then I saw two little girls," he continued, "standing at a counter, asking for food. Not begging, not stealing, just asking. And something inside me cracked. Because once upon a time I was that kid, and no one saw me." He took a deep breath. "So I decided to see them. And when I saw them, everything changed." He turned toward Helen, then back to the judge. "This isn't about permits, or policies, or parking violations. This is about whether we still have room in our hearts for one simple thing: compassion." Silence followed. A long, deep silence. Then his lawyer stood. "Your Honor, we'd like to call our first witness." The courtroom doors opened. And in walked Layla and Maya. They wore clean dresses and held hands tightly. The courtroom held its breath. They were small, but their presence was powerful. Layla was the first to speak. "We didn't have food. Sometimes we had to sleep without dinner. Mama tried her best." She looked at Keanu. "Then one day he gave us bread. And he didn't ask for anything." Maya followed, her voice softer. "Then he gave us stories. Then he helped Mama get medicine when we were sick. And then he gave us hope." The judge looked at them. "And did he ever ask you to be on the news?" They both shook their heads quickly. "Did he ask you to pose for cameras or say things you didn't want to?" Layla replied firmly, "No, sir." The room was quiet. Then, unexpectedly, the judge asked, "May I ask why you come to the bakery?" "Even after all this," Maya answered. "Because it feels like home." Keanu's eyes shimmered. He wasn't the only one. Even the clerk at the front wiped his eyes, but Helen's lawyer wasn't done. He stood, clearing his throat. "Your Honor, with all due respect, we are not arguing feelings. We are arguing legality." He clicked a button. A screen behind him lit up, showing footage of crowds outside the bakery. This footage shows large gatherings, blocked sidewalks, even unsupervised children. The foundation is not legally certified to host events of this scale. "This is a violation," the judge nodded. "I've seen the footage." Then he looked toward Keanu's lawyer. "Do you have a response?" The lawyer stood and pointed toward the back door. "We'd like to present our own footage, Your Honor." The door opened again. This time, a projector was rolled in. On the screen, a short video began to play. It showed Maria handing bread to a child in silence, a volunteer helping another with homework, Keanu quietly sweeping the sidewalk, laughter, hugs, moments that couldn't be faked. The last frame showed a group of kids holding signs that read, "Thank you for seeing us." The judge folded his hands together and sat back. "We'll take a short break," he said. As people began to file out of the room, Helen stepped forward and whispered harshly to Keanu, "You think this is over? I built this district. I'll bury your name in lawsuits." Keanu leaned close, calm as stone. "Go ahead, but remember one thing." He looked her straight in the eye. "You can't sue love." Helen stepped back, her face turning red. Outside the courtroom, hundreds had gathered. They clapped when Layla and Maya stepped out. Maria held their hands. Strangers passed out water bottles. The bakery was being painted on posters. The city was watching, and by evening, the hearing resumed. The judge read through every detail. He looked at every file, listened to every voice, and finally, as the clock neared 7 p.m., he looked up. Double quotes, "I find no legal reason to shut down the Layla and Maya Foundation. And I strongly advise the complainant to consider the real cost of pursuing a case against something so rooted in goodwill." He closed the folder. Case dismissed. The room erupted. Some cried. Others hugged. Cameras clicked. Cheers rang. Out down the hallway, Helen sat frozen. And Keanu? He looked down at the twins, smiled softly, and whispered, "You did it." But deep down, he knew this was only one victory. The real work was still ahead, and something big was waiting. Something that would bring even more light or danger, because someone else had been watching the whole thing, and they were not clapping. Shadow in the crowd sky was gray the next morning, like it hadn't made up its mind yet. Rain hovered in the clouds but didn't fall. The bakery reopened, its doors wide, fresh bread lining the shelves again. Maria tied a yellow ribbon across the counter. The mural of the twin girls had been cleaned and restored. A new sign was added next to it, "Where kindness is baked fresh daily." But even with the victory in court, something had shifted. Keanu Reeves felt it in his chest. A strange silence had followed the cheers. Not the peaceful kind, something colder. The day before, a man had watched from the back row of the courtroom. No one had noticed him. No one had seen the phone in his pocket quietly recording. No one knew his name, but his face was known in quiet places, corporate offices, developer meetings, city council backrooms. His name was Dylan Hart, a real estate developer with one goal: take control of that block where the bakery stood. And he had just realized something: Helen Crawford had failed. But that didn't mean the fight was over. Keanu sat on a bench near the bakery, laying out designs with a young architect who had volunteered to help expand the space. "We could open a reading room next door," the architect said. "Kids could come after school, do homework, eat something warm." Keanu nodded. "And maybe even offer music lessons." "A few friends of mine play." "You mean famous friends?" The architect smiled. Maybe, Keanu said with a soft grin. But they're just people, like everyone else. Suddenly, Maria rushed out of the shop, a folded letter in her hand. Keanu, she called, her voice shaky. You need to see this. He stood and took the letter. It was from the city again, but this time, it wasn't about permits. It was about ownership. The letter stated that a private developer had filed a bid to purchase the land beneath the bakery and surrounding buildings. They planned to tear it down for a luxury high-rise. The bakery had 90 days to vacate if the bid went through. Keanu single quotes, as hands tightened around the paper. Who filed the bid? He asked. Maria pointed to the bottom corner. Dylan Hart Development Group. Keanu closed his eyes. They're trying another way. That evening, a town hall meeting was called. It was packed. Neighbors stood up, one after another, fighting for the bakery. This place feeds our kids. This place saved my son from the streets. This is not just a bakery, it's the heart of our neighborhood. Keanu sat in the back quietly, listening. But Dylan Hart was there too. He wore a suit, clean and smooth. He didn't speak until the end. Then he stepped up to the microphone. I understand your emotion, he said coolly. But this area is falling apart. We're offering growth, value, safety. Our high-rise would include job opportunities, better housing, and a future. He paused. You can't build the future on old bread. Gasps echoed across the room. Keanu stood slowly. No, he said, walking to the mic. But you can't build the future by erasing the past either. He turned to the crowd. This place isn't just bread. It's history. It's people. It's everything money can't measure. Applause followed, but Dylan just smirked. Then buy the land, he said. Outbid us. Keanu didn't flinch. How much? $6 million, Dylan replied casually. The room fell silent. Maria covered her mouth. But Keanu. He stayed calm. Fine, he said. We'll find it. After the meeting, Maria caught up with him outside. Keanu, she said, you can't be serious. I am. But where will we get $6 million? He looked at her, then at the bakery. We won't. The world will. And that's when he launched something that would shake the internet. A video. Simple, raw, unedited. Keanu sat on the same bakery bench, holding the letter in one hand. Hi, he said. You know me as an actor. But this story isn't about movies. It's about two little girls who asked for bread. And a city that tried to take away their hope. He held up the eviction notice. They want to tear this place down. Replace it with a building that none of us will ever afford. But we're not going quietly. We're going to fight with kindness, with unity, with truth. He paused. If this place has ever meant something to you, help us save it. The video ended with a simple link. SaveTheBakery.org. Within 12 hours, donations started pouring in. Within 24, celebrities shared it. Within 48, international media picked it up. But Dylan wasn't worried that he had power. He had backup plans, and one of those plans was a lie. On day 5 of the fundraiser, an article appeared online with the headline, Keanu Reeves Bakery Tied to Illegal Activity, says anonymous source. It was fake. All of it. Fabricated stories. Fake receipts. Edited photos. But it started spreading. Keanu got calls from reporters. Angry tweets. Trolls flooded the donation site. Maria cried in the back room. They're ruining everything. Keanu walked into the bakery, silent. He looked at the scared volunteers. The confused children. Then he stood by the mural. We don't stop, he said. They can lie. But truth walks slowly, and it always gets there. The next morning, Keanu went live again. This time, he didn't defend himself. He stood with Maya and Layla beside him. He let them speak. Maya held up a loaf of bread. They said bad things about him, she said. But he gave me this when no one else would. Layla added, he never asked us for anything. He just helped us breathe again. The live video went viral. People began fact-checking the fake article. It collapsed in hours. And the donations doubled. On the 10th day, the total reached 5.2 million. Still short. Keanu sat alone that night in the bakery, lights off, thinking. He looked at the photo on the wall, him and the twins, smiling. Then, his phone buzzed. A message from an old friend. Subject: one more miracle? The message read, "I saw your story. You were always the best of us. Check your account in 5 minutes." He refreshed the fundraiser page. The number changed. 6.8 million. Tears filled his eyes. But as he stood to tell Maria the news, a brick crashed through the bakery window. A note tied to it. In red ink, "You win the land, but you've made enemies." He picked up the brick, silent, then looked at the mural, now cracked. "Then let them come," he whispered. "We're not backing down." The harvest of kindness morning, after the brick shattered the bakery's window, the neighborhood was unusually quiet. People walked slower. Doors opened with more caution. Everyone had seen the photo, Keanu holding the brick with the red ink message, standing beside the cracked mural of Layla and Maya. But instead of fear, something else began to rise. Resolve. Volunteers returned, sweeping glass before the sun rose. A local artist came with paint to fix the mural. A woman brought flowers. Children drew hearts on the sidewalk with chalk. By noon, the bakery looked whole again. But Keanu Reeves knew it wasn't over. Inside the bakery, Maria stared at him. "Who would go this far, even after we got the land?" Keanu shook his head. "Someone who thinks money gives them the right to erase people." Across town, Dylan Hart sat in his glass office, angry. His developers backed out. The city was distancing itself. The media had turned on him. And his last move, the article smear, had failed. His assistant entered. "Sir, they're rebuilding. They raised the full amount. And donations are still climbing." Dylan stood slowly. "Fine. Let them build it. But let's see if they can keep it safe." But what he didn't realize was this. What Keanu had built wasn't just a bakery. It was a movement. The next 2 weeks were filled with something magical. The bakery didn't just reopen. It bloomed. It now had a reading corner with shelves of donated books, a small room for after-school tutoring, a quiet table where people could write letters, study, or sit in peace. Every morning, Keanu showed up, sometimes with bread, sometimes with stories, and sometimes with nothing but time to sit with people who felt invisible. And across the city, other bakeries began copying the model. Signs went up. Free bread for kids. Pay what you can. Days. Story hour with a neighbor. The Layla and Maya Foundation began receiving letters from schools, churches, libraries, even city halls from other states asking how to start their own. Maria couldn't believe it. "We were almost shut down. Now we're everywhere." Keanu just smiled. Kindness spreads when you stop trying to own it. But not everyone was happy. One afternoon, a man in a black coat approached the bakery. His eyes were sharp, cold. He said he was a private investigator sent by Dylan Hart. He asked Maria to provide receipts for every loaf of bread given for free. "We're not hiding anything," Maria replied, shaking slightly. Keanu walked in and placed his hand on her shoulder. "We'll give you what you need," he told the man. "But don't think for 1 second that paperwork can measure what happens here." The man left without a word. The next day, something unexpected happened. The twins' mother, who had found a job and was doing better, walked into the bakery with an envelope. "I want to donate," she said softly. Maria tried to stop her. "You don't have to," but she insisted. "I do, because you didn't just save my girls. You reminded me I'm still a mother worth fighting for." That evening, Keanu sat on the bakery steps, looking at the sunset. Layla and Maya ran up beside him, holding 2 pieces of paper. "We drew this for you," Layla said. One was a picture of the bakery. The other was of Keanu, sitting with the girls, surrounded by bread and books. Above it, Maya had written, "You saw us when no one did that." Keanu felt his throat tighten. He looked at them, then back at the picture. "Can I keep this forever?" he asked. They nodded. He folded the drawings carefully and placed them in his notebook. But that night, just as he closed the bakery gate, his phone buzzed. A message from Dylan Hart. It was a single sentence. "The city may forgive you, but I won't." Keanu stared at it for a long time. Then he typed back, "Forgiveness was never mine to take. It's yours to choose." He turned off the phone because that chapter was closed. A few months later, the bakery hosted a community celebration. A soft breeze carried the smell of cinnamon and warm rolls. Children played music, people shared stories, and Maria stood on a small stool to make an announcement. "Thanks to your support," she said with a trembling smile, "we are opening 2 more bakeries next year. One will be named after my late husband, the other after the twins who started it all." Cheers erupted. Layla and Maya clapped the loudest. Keanu stood to the side, away from the crowd, watching it all unfold. A reporter approached him quietly. "Keanu," she said, "everyone wants to know what's next for you." He looked at the bakery, the children, the mothers, the mural now glowing under string lights. Then he answered, "I'm just going to keep showing up." And that was the truth, because, for all his fame and fortune, the greatest role Keanu Reeves ever played wasn't on a screen. It was as a man who heard 2 little girls asking for bread and chose to answer with love.